conversation now, yeah. Oh yeah, Michal, your camera's off.
I've just turned it on. Oh, that's why I didn't click the button.
Oh well, that's handy enough.
Yeah. Are we going to start every live with me going?
We'll have technical problems today, lads, so you'll have to enjoy that. And I wouldn't mind.
Just get a still image of me.
I wouldn't mind. I go to check, and the first thing that pops up is Michal's channel. So, good morning, everybody. How are you keeping? Welcome to Michal's technical problems for today.
Standard. Well, it's better than my life story that you were just getting there before we went live.
I'll pop over there and see if Owen's channel is up and working. Hey, by the way, guys, if you can hear us, leave us an old comment, and like would be great as well.
I think it's working on mine, and I remembered to put on monetization this time because I have. If for some reason for this, I have to click on monetization to get whatever 50 cents that I make from it or something like that.
Use your 10 cents for today, lads. I don't even get that. I'm still on demonetized. The old YouTube, geez, those lads, they don't know if they're coming or going on YouTube. Like, Jesus, you bitch about tickety talk, like YouTube, Jesus Christ, like, honestly, they don't know how to work that thing at all.
Right, so you say about like my technical problems at the start of every live, and then you whinge about your demonetization by slating YouTube while you're streaming on YouTube.
Oh, no problem. I hear, Michal, I say this to their face. Like, we've gone way past the line of politeness, myself and YouTube.
I know, it's been years of dramas since you started, effectively.
Oh, stop. Yeah. No. YouTube knows fully well how I feel about them, and they know how I feel. You know, love is mutual between me and YouTube. You know, some deep hatred between the two of us. Like, people are terrified of saying things on YouTube. I have no problems as long as it doesn't step on the toes of the CIA and the FBI. I don't care. You know, honestly, like. The only times I get tick is when people come into the chat and start cursing and blinding and talking about modern politics because they don't have a clue what they're talking about, you know?
Okay.
Other than that, like, if you guys all come in here and talk about modern, you know, what was it, medieval history and all that stuff, no problems, you know? But yeah, that's my view, all right. So good morning, everybody. How are you all keeping today?
We're fine.
Susan, how are you doing?
I'm Dennis and Dan.
So,
hello.
Hi,
everybody.
I can't see the chat.
Hope everyone's doing well.
Do I have to click? Oh.
So anyway.
Oh, that's why. You have to... I another technical problem. I didn't realize you have to click the chat button in the top right to see it.
Last week you didn't.
How's Africa today?
Last week.
Someone's
coming live from Africa. Hi, Fogness.
And
someone from Kurdistan.
Pumping everywhere.
We're doing really well internationally tonight.
Oh, aye. So anyway, I'm covering the old Irish ring forts. That's what we're covering tonight, lads. And we'll wait for people to start packing in. Although we're getting quite crowded, quite quick, aren't we, tonight? At up at 46 views, so that's not bad. Not bad for us anyway.
Good. But does this, just real quickly before we get really into it, you know, the lives, does it go collect? Does it show you as a collective? So last week's Pagan Ireland and Conversion of Christ, I can see the views. Is that all of our views together, or is that just my views?
No, that's yours individually.
Oh. So
because if you go into my one, it's different again. Like,
be interesting to see. Does everyone know what they got for last week, so we see how much we got as a collective?
Yeah, I do. Well, 1 second. I'll have a view for last week right now, actually.
Hi, Kat.
I'll fly over.
And Jim O'Neill, yeah. Hello.
Hi, Jim.
If you click on live, I am what was it called, for pagans, Ireland, and conversion to Christianity last week. I got 1,200 live.
Wow.
But that was, I say that's just mostly people just quickly flying by. Like,
that's rare. I got 1,081, so that's good. We got a good reach on that one. Then that's nice. It's nice to see.
Don't worry about getting the name wrong, Jim. I spent many years living outside Ireland, and I just gave up. I cannot pronounce Owen. Too many vowels.
How's Jim doing tonight? I forget what part. Jim, what are you living off in the States or Canada or Australia?
Just mention half the world there. List off a load of countries.
The countries that Irish Americans.
Yeah, every diaspora country.
We've got people from Israel and everything on tonight. Jeez, we're getting packed and loaded. Right. Anyway, we better get started before everyone buzzes off again. Yes. So anyway, we are covering Irish ring forts tonight. However, I need to quickly pack this down before we start flying off, and I'll get you guys comments if you guys have any other comments outside of the medieval period, because I know people will see ring forts and their imagination will start going absolutely wild. And if we were to talk about ring forts as a whole, actually, in fact, even tonight's subject, God, we can just talk and talk and talk all night, but we'll try to keep it down to the 2-hour point. But regardless, I just want to quickly cram it down to around 550 all the way up to the around 13th century, where these things finally start to disappear. Mostly hum down to around the 550 point up to around 1014 would be mostly ideal when talking about Irish ring forts in the early medieval period. Of course, if you two, Owen and Michal, have any commentary for the evolution going between the Bronze Age Ireland with the Bronze Age ring forts up to around the Irish ring forts for that date around 550 to around the I'd say 12th, 13th century, when they finally start to completely disappear off the map. You're more than welcome to butt in there and talk about the evolution of that.
I wouldn't use the word ring fort for the Bronze Age forts. First, because they seem to be forts, unlike the ring forts, which is a very bad name. It's an easy name to remember, but it's bad because they weren't forts, as we'll come on to. And secondly, what you had in the Bronze Age were something much bigger, like Dunengasa, and you had hill, and then later on you had hill forts, etc. You had much bigger fortifications, much bigger settlements.
I think we're going to have the same problem, which I think it's a standard problem all in any history, is when we have when we did the talk on clans, where you have modern terminology, which has started to encompass a lot more subsections, and people don't differentiate between the two using the modern terminology that we just referred to. And I think we'll try and break it down a bit, but I imagine even I might slip into modern terminology from times, so feel free to whip me back into line.
Because Susan is asking a question: what, in your opinion, is the earliest ring fort? And to me, it's something in the 6th century, 500, 550 AD. They are the earliest ring forts. Like, as I mentioned, Dunengasa, that's not a ring fort. It's a promontory fort. And it's something much bigger and very, very different in a way than the ring forts. Most ring forts are essentially family homes. They are built, they were made in networks as well, because if you go, like I'm here in South Kerry, or if you go to Clare, Cork, and you find one ring fort, look around and you'll find more. Quite often there might be a bigger one, which was of a bigger lord, and then several other small ones. So they, like, I think Philip, I gave this book to Philip. Okay, it's all backwards. The Irish Ring Fort by Matthew Stout. It's a very good, it's a good book. It's a bit dense to read, like it's heavy in data and stuff like that. But he's probably the best expert on ring forts at the moment, and he basically dates them from 550 to 900, maybe a little after 900.
I did write down. I did write down. I finally got notes with me this time. Unlike the pagan Ireland where I couldn't get access to them, and I actually wrote down some just brief terminology so we can just put it in here now so people sort of know what we're on about. And I just wanted to say, so there's different terms that are used. So we had wrath, or wrath, depending on your local dialect, which is an earthen bank rampart. You have a liss, which is the interior enclosed yard within a rath, and a dun or dune, which is a stronghold fortress, high status or strategically sited, not necessarily circular, and often included promontory forts, as Owen has said. Then you have cahir or cashel, which is a stone-built enclosure, which is typically used as the term is normally used more Western Ireland. Cashel comes from the Latin Castilian. And then we'll have other, I'm sure, and that's just to give you all, anyone who's sort of listening, an idea when we're sort of talking about any of these individual sites or general things, to just get an idea of how they're broken down a wee bit.
Yeah, there'll be terms we'll be covering a few times all right tonight, because I actually have it in the PowerPoint as well, those terms. So if you guys missed it this time around, I'll be covering that a few times as well. So it is interesting that we do have Bronze Age forts, as Owen O'Neill has highlighted there, and we see that kind of evolution going between, I'd say, we start to see Bronze Age ring forts start to appear around 2000 BC, perhaps around 500, the evolution then coming from 2000 BC, evolving then all the way up to around, I'd say about 500 BC. And that's where we start to see the massive, humongous declining of these Bronze Age forts. Would you agree with me, lads, that once we hit around 500 BC, we start to see this sudden decline of the Bronze Age forts?
Yeah, I think so generally. At the beginning of the Iron Age, Ireland enters into sort of the Dark Ages, the Irish Dark Ages. We don't have that much information about them. I'm not that up to date on the exact chronology, but the many of the, like, as well as say Dunangus, etc., you have the Irish historic sites, which would be Tara, Rathcrogran, Dunolina, which are all pre-Gaelic, pre-Iron Age. They were very important sites in the Bronze Age, and Cashel as well. Some of them remained, like Tara, remained in use until probably the 7th century. Some of the other ones weren't used, but the Gaelic people had the idea of these sites of kingship. Like Queen Maeve was based in Rathcrogran, Tara was the kings of Tara, Cashel was the kings of Munster, Dunolina was Leinster, and Owenmacher was Ulster. None of these are ring forts. They're much bigger than ring forts, and they are sites of kingship, sites of inauguration, sacred in a way. But again, come 500, they start to they enter in decline, or else they change. Like Tara changes quite a bit.
Yeah, I think the problem we have is obviously 18th, 19th century antiquarians often, made arguments and linked ring forts to the Bronze Age and Iron Age. Cara Gilly comes to mind as one that you can find texts written by older historians, sort of linking these sites to Bronze Age and Iron Age, sort of ring forts or other sort of settlements. So, but one thing is just we've got to really be honed down on the point is that there's no securely dated prehistoric earthen ring forts in Ireland. The problem we have is that actually a lot of these, and Owen has covered this in a lot of his videos, so I would say, is that a lot of these aren't excavated and they haven't been had archaeological digs on them. So a lot of them we don't actually have a lot of information about them.
Yeah, in relation to dating, Matthew Stout in this book covers it. He looks, there aren't that many that they can date, but the ones that the ring forts that they can date most of them are between 600 and 900. I think 2/3 of the ones that they can date, where they find material, etc. Like Tara, they've found a lot of dating, but Tara is fairly unique in that it goes back to the Neolithic. Tara is very, very old, even by Irish standards. Awan Maca is old; it goes back a lot as well. But I think Awan Maca was abandoned by the Christian period. So ring forts start to develop basically in the Christian period, and I think that's very well established.
Aye. That's just watch what you're saying there. I have to go block a few comments there because you're going a bit off the beaten track. We'll try to keep to ring forts today. Here's the second there.
Just in relation,
everyone's allowed to their opinion.
Vinny asked a good question there. Did the idea of
he did actually? I was just about to jump over that one.
Building ring forts or networks come from abroad or developed natively? I would go for the latter. I think it was developed here.
Yes,
it was.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. It's a native early medieval innovation, and it drew selectively on long-standing enclosure habits. With being a direct prehistoric continuation, but it took influences obviously from.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
So it definitely took influences, but it is I think we're all in agreement then that it is a native invention or innovation.
Yeah, because there isn't a huge, when you see the Romans and they're slowly creeping into Gaul and they're creeping into Britain, there's not the huge massive jump of the development of ring forts that you see in Pictland. When you see the Romans creeping into Gaul and France, you suddenly see ring forts in Britain suddenly jump up in development. I don't actually see the same development happening in Ireland the way I see. Maybe Owen will contradict me with that one.
In England, perhaps especially in the south, but my English geography is not the best. You have a lot of hill forts, big hill forts. There's a place I've never been to it. I've only seen the pictures. I think it's called Maiden Castle, and that's somewhere in the south of England. And these they've been excavated. A lot of, I think they got reused in the Roman or post-Roman period. In Ireland, there are some hill forts, but they're much smaller. Perhaps because the population, especially in the early Iron Age, the population was quite smaller. Secondly, Ireland wasn't invaded by Julius Caesar or any other Roman emperor with a large number of troops, which necessitated the development of a big military fort as such.
Yeah, I think with Scotland, obviously, from studying Scottish history, the chronology doesn't actually fit the Irish ring fort peak of 600 to 900 AD. You have after the early Dalriada movement into Argyll in the 5th century, ring forts are unlikely to have been part of that early cultural package moving between Ireland and Scotland. And also that, and if you look at Argyll, part of the early Dalriada, it's more earthen ring forts, and I know earthen ring forts are actually largely absent because they favoured nuclear forts, something called nuclear forts, which is clustered buildings. If you look at Donad, that's the idea. If any of you have known what Donad, the site of Donad looks like, that's a nuclear fort. So that's what they were building in Scotland rather than in Ireland. So that's how you can see that they're not that's one thing, they're not exchanging between each other whenever you do have the Dalriada movement.
And that's a good point, Michael, because about 10 years ago, maybe more, a Scottish, I don't know if he was a historian or archaeologist, he published a paper in which he said there was no archaeological evidence for Gaelic Irish having Dalriada having happened. But then,
I'll I will just, but it's Ewan Campbell. He's an archaeologist, but you can continue so other people can know who you're about.
Yeah, Ewan Campbell. But then I know that some people refuted him and said, look, there's no archaeological evidence because they moved before the ring forts started appearing I was about to say the south, not the south, in Ireland. They, as you just said, they moved before the ring forts, so they didn't build ring forts because they weren't being built in Ireland at the time.
Fascinating. Kat, thanks for that one, folks. Make sure to hit the like button and support us. Yeah, definitely do that. Thanks.
Thank you
very much for that, guys.
I will just say though, actually, if we're still just quiet on Scotland, there was exchanges though of like stone built traditions, like duns, like duns. That's something that can be exchanged between the two. Cashels are another one. Fortified outcrops are another one. So those we can see the exchange happening in those sort of buildings, but not in ring forts. So I just want to say we can see a movement. We can see transaction of culture and building techniques, but not specifically ring forts.
It'll be an interesting one, all right, especially with more and more archaeological work that's going to be done in the Rock of Cashel, because obviously you guys have been listening to the Medieval Irish podcast, especially to do with Cashel and stuff, and how they were saying that they feel as though that they still need to do more work into the Rock of Cashel and find out what is the link in the 5th century between the Rock of Cashel down in Tipperary and its connection perhaps over to the the south of Wales, and see where this development in fortification starts to come over from. Maybe I was a bit too dismissive by saying, okay, so there doesn't seem to be any form of development going on between Gaul, Britain and Ireland, that whole link between Ireland and Britain and Gaul, where Britain and Gaul seem to be very much, connected as the Romans are coming in and taking over. It's difficult to say how much of an influence is coming over from Britain into Ireland. And it does make archaeology far, more and more archaeological digs in the future really exciting to see what is that connection, especially when we enter after 90 AD and we start to see this whole Hiberno-Roman start to appear, especially with recent archaeological digs that are popping up left, right and centre in Ireland, where we're finding more and more of these Roman Britain pottery popping up, which seems to indicate that there's definitely some kind of link going on between Ireland and Britain, especially going into 90 AD.
Yeah, I think archaeologists have gotten better at joining things together. So instead of just writing about an excavation in Wales, in one place in Wales, or an excavation in one place in Ireland, they're joining dots better. Their technology has advanced a lot in recent years. Like with LIDAR, they can find out loads without having to destroy, without having to dig, because every archaeological dig destroys something. So like they have found a few years back in Tara a henge. There was a huge henge going around it's kind of around the center of it, but a very, very big wooden henge was there. They discovered that. And I think there's going to be some very, very fascinating discoveries, and people are putting things together. And like academia kind of works, people build on top of the works of others, sometimes in agreement, sometimes in contradiction, in arguments. And then quite often in the past, academics sometimes have just stayed in their own little hobby hole, their old cubicle. People are talking about hobbits is confusing me. They stayed in their own little section. Now they're kind of jumping from trying to join dots from two different countries.
Yeah, I think you raise a great point there, because if you find in Cornwall and Wales, you have something called British rounds, and they're sort of enclosed farmsteads, and they sort of largely ceased to exist by the 3rd century. But you could easily in 18th century, 19th century antiquarians could easily have just connected the two together. But we now know from further excavations, communications with other countries, and better research, that it's more of a useful analogues rather than direct parents of the. So British rounds are related, but they're not the direct parents of Irish ring forts. So we can see similar buildings appearing all over the place. It doesn't mean that they are directly related to each other. And obviously, like Philip said, then you have the exposure to Roman military enclosure practices, which obviously could have influenced Irish fashions, as it were. But yeah, it's great point there, that how more advanced we are and how more in communications we are with other teams, and that we can sort of whittle it down a bit better.
Just popping back over to the comment section there before I forget everybody. What place would you suggest was the greatest ring fort? Ooh. I think that's down to opinion, though, more than anything else, because obviously I'm insanely biased and would say that the Rock of Cashel is definitely one of the best ring forts on the island. But you can see Mihal's face already lighting up there. Like, Mihal, what's your
no. I think the Rock of Cashel is a stunning one. The problem is and it has a great history. It's just I'm thinking of all the families that are connected to other ring forts, and then I sort of get biased towards the families rather than the ring fort. So I don't think it's fair for me to sort of say I will have to agree Cashel as a site that it is today is definitely one of the best ones. But I do feel that Kerry is the best place for ring forts. I think Kerry, if you were to look, and I know a lot of them are modern, I would say that, but obviously there's a huge part of me that's obviously going to be Great Anelich, which is, O'Neill site. So I'm going to have to go for Great Anelich.
But
go on there.
I would say that neither Cashel or the Grinon are ring forts, because they both go back. They're both kingship sites in a way. Grinon I was there many years and I loved it. I really want to go back. It was restored in the 19th century. It is something more than a ring fort. I like the good, simple-ish ring forts, and I agree about the Kerry ones. I'm going to give 3, all from Kerry, and all relative. One is Staig Fort, which is near Castle Cove. It's at the bottom of the Iveragh Peninsula. It may actually predate. It may go back to the Bronze Age. Some people say it does. I'm not sure. It's been restored in a small way, but it's very, very nice. Another one is that no one here is going to have ever heard of. It's Rathkieran. Rathkieran is in a place called the Glen, which is near Portmagee. It's the other side of the mountain from Portmagee. it is a rat in that it's not. There's no stone used in it, but it's a bivalate ring fort in that there are two rings outside it, and it's very big. It's very big, and it's quite an interesting place. You could disappear down the two outer ditches. You could, like, they're very, very deep. And then the third one is Cahergal, which is in a place called Over the Water, outside Carsavine, and that was restored. It was restored well. It's very big, and it also appears to have been a kingship site. It was used by probably the O'Falves when they had in the 8th century. Ivora and Dingle, the two peninsulas, were the same kingdom, the kingdom of Corcadivna. And then it was divided into 3 parts. And Cahergal appears to have been the ceremonial basis of one of the parts. It's a very nice place. So I can't give you one, I'm giving you 3.
Nice.
Extra value.
Okay, just popping back over to the comment section, we have a question for Michal. I don't know if you'd be able to elaborate on this one. I'm assuming, Caveman, you just want us to elaborate on this a wee bit, with the fighting that's happening up in the, what was it, Michal's area in around, I'm assuming that's 300 AD there, is it? I'm assuming anyway. Michal, is there anything you can elaborate with on that one?
Let me just find the comment. Sorry, just give me 2 seconds.
Oh, yeah, take your second there.
Apparently, the Archaeology tribe confederation sacked Omaha in 300s and established themselves in the area, taking it from the Ulid. The problem with that, the timing of that is when you're literally talking really before you have concrete records. Most of our records start in the 5th century, by which stage, or 5th, 6th century, by which stage they're being heavily influenced by, rich families, shall we say. The Archaeologians were no different to the Enil, the Dalriada, or Dalriada, in claiming antiquity when claiming links to antiquity when they didn't have such a claim. So the Archaeologian Confederation is probably one of the least written about groups of people, I would say, that we have enough information about. There are obviously some that have disappeared completely from history, but we know the Archaeologian Confederation existed. They're obviously in 300, you're talking, that's around the time of the 3 colours, which again is a whole debate all on its own. So I would say that there's probably some link to a group in Armagh, Monaghan, that sort of area of the world, that did have some aggression to Omaha. But to say it's the Archaeologians, I couldn't concretely say, just because of the 300 AD is really a dark period of record keeping, and anything we do know about it is probably Leistin propaganda.
Hope it does. Just popping over to them. Sorry, Owen.
I was just going to say that a couple of people are naming interesting ring forts. Dan Breen is going for the one on the Aran Island. There's a couple on the Aran Islands. Everyone knows Dunengasa, but also on that one is Dún Dubhcathaoir, which is very, very nice. It's smaller. I'm not sure whether it's a promontory fort or a ring fort itself. I visited it 30 years ago, and it doesn't make a full ring. It's on a cliff, so it may have been a promontory fort. And then Caveman has listed the Cassidy Rat in Fermanagh, which I don't know, but I'm going to put on my list. I love to get indications like this. And he's also listed Skia Gowra, where the Maguire Kings of Fermanagh were inaugurated. Again, it's going to go on my list. If anyone else wants to throw in ring forts, please do.
Oh yeah, solidly, guys. Some great comments there off you guys. Sorry, Mihal. Sorry for cutting in there. What do you want to elaborate
No, I
on
was just there was 2 points. First of all, does anyone remember what the one in the Aran Islands is with the lighthouse built in the middle of it? There's I think it's an old, or it's a rescue center for the Coast Guard. Or I remember going there for my honeymoon, and I went up this hill, and there was this ring fort at the top of it, and there was this lighthouse, or I don't know if it was a lighthouse or a tower for like I say, air rescue sort of coast guards. But I'd love to know the name of that one because it's driving me mad. As for I will just say for the Cassidy Wrath in Fermanagh, a lot of people need to realize that a lot of these names that are associated with families are 19th century, not reimaginings or inventions. They're normally taken from. So what they would do is they would get maps, medieval maps or whatever, and they would put them over aerial maps of today and sort of link them to. And they would go, well, there's 3 forts in this area, and we know that King Ciaran of Desmumu, the nephew of Brian Boru, was in this area. That big one must be Ciaran's Wrath, or Ciaran's Dun, or Dun Ciaran, or with actually no real evidence apart from it was the biggest one, and we know the king who was in the area, so it must have been his. But there's no actual clear evidence of some of that. So you've got to be a bit careful with going, well, that's got my family name in it, so that must be our ancient homeland, or, ancient fort, when some of them are guesstimations based on limited evidence, and they've just been renamed that in the 19th century, and later on. So just be careful with that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Just popping back over to the comments section there. This is a one I've been looking at for quite some time as a whole, and from my knowledge, unless the lads want to elaborate on that, it's just a complete conspiracy theory. In fact, I bumped into somebody on TikTok that wanted to go over and start digging up the ring forts, and I can't advise enough: do not touch the ring forts unless you're a qualified archaeologist. Don't go chasing these wild conspiracies and stuff. So from my knowledge so far, it's all complete and utter conspiracy theories, and unless you're a qualified archaeologist who has a permit and all the other stuff that's needed for it, do not go chasing after these, mad stuff. If you're interested in Souterrains, we'll definitely elaborate on Souterrains later on, because that's sort of what you're talking about is Souterrains, but you're bumping then into these mad, insane conspiracy theories. And what's crazy about it is that if you want to go to Souterrains, there's actually plenty of Souterrains you can investigate without damaging the site itself around it, going after these mad conspiracies.
You just have to be very skinny.
I seen. Let me have a quick second.
I disappeared down a few Souterrains in ring forts when I was a little skinny lad. I wouldn't fit in anymore.
Yeah, I have. There's a lot of terrifying stories when it comes down to Souterrains and stuff, and this is why I'd say definitely get yourself a qualification within archaeology and stuff before you start investigating into Souterrains and stuff, because even for archaeologists, Souterrains can be very dangerous. And so the whole thing of it collapsing while you're doing your investigation and stuff. So I definitely would advise to get yourself qualified when it comes down to doing the archaeology and stuff before you go off and start doing your investigation to find out, is all the Souterrains connected together? I would definitely say it's a conspiracy theory for sure. But if you want to prove me wrong, go and get yourself qualified first before investigating into this, because, first and foremost, you'll damage the site. And secondly, on top of that as well, it's the danger to yourself of these things collapsing on top of you. So God forbid, I wouldn't want anything to happen to you guys, to be quite honest with you.
Sorry, Susan is just asking, I think she wants me to clarify the name. Yeah, it's Rat Kieran, in the Glen. It's near Finian's Bay, the beach of Finian's Bay.
Can't find it now, to be honest with you, that comment. But yeah, I'll just pop back over. Where was I? Fin Dwyer. Fin Dwyer has an amazing podcast, guys. Fin Dwyer is one of those very rare historians, and it's the same thing with Dr. Owen O'Neill there, that can actually jump between medieval history and early modern history and not kind of trip over itself, because I find a lot of the time with many historians, to be quite honest with you, especially when switching between 1014 with the Battle of Clontarf and then suddenly jumping over to 1916, there's, oh my God, the amount of mistakes that you'll suddenly see. I've bumped into Waterstones. I went into Waterstones once, picked out a book, and they literally started off with talking about 1014 and how the Irish had beaten the Vikings in the Battle of Clontarf. And then suddenly the next page was 1916. And I was like, okay, this historian is tripping over himself. But the great thing about Fin Dwyer is that when he's talking about medieval history, he talks about it in its context of medieval history, of these warlords going around the place, fighting each other and challenging one another, and then how these other families came in and started to dominate the area. He never really talks about it from a nationalist perspective, unless then he's going over to the early modern period where you start to get that kind of nationalist fire behind your belly. So Fin Dwyer, can't advise him enough. He's absolutely amazing. And he's over in Irish history.
He had a very good episode a short while ago, talking about the proposed Year of the Normans, that celebration. I found that very informative and very interesting.
Yeah, his insight, because he is so good at going between, like that podcast was absolutely terrific, and another very, very good example of how Fin Dwyer is able to switch from medieval history to a modern history so quickly. And he's one of the few people that can do that, because the amount of, and I don't want to be disrespectful to a lot of you guys, but many historians and academics, I read their work, and when they're switching between early modern history or modern history in general, and then going over to medieval history, they just can't digest the idea that you're talking about warlords and families rather than a nationalist idea. And a lot of people do kind of trip over that, where I find Fin Dwyer doesn't do that. And it's the same thing with yourself there, Dr. Owen O'Neill, as well, that you don't switch over, you don't trip over yourself. You can tell the difference between what's happening today and what happened. For example, the Battle of Clontarf. I think Battle of Clontarf is one of the best examples, because I see so many historians, they just can't digest the idea that you're not dealing with Ireland versus Norway. This is literally, what was it, the Dal Cash demanding their tribute from the men of Dublin. You know, that, from my opinion, that's what's going on there. It's not a nationalist idea, like.
But I think one thing to take away from medieval history to modern politics is that the North is better than the South. So
the boys in the email, huh? Don't you worry, Aaron. Don't you worry. Who's going to be paying up their tribute next year, huh? You boys in the North will be paying up your tribute, no problems to us, and it's all cash.
Neil are the true kings of Ireland, just
right. I'll just elaborate.
Carry out the football kings.
Everybody's going grabbing cattle tribute there. No one's kicking the ball around the place. Right. I'll just pop over there because I just want to elaborate a wee bit more, because we've been slightly hinting and indicating on this one, and that is by far one of the most popular of the ring forts in Ireland, which is, and you definitely can't, I don't think you can disagree with the definition of a farmstead ring fort being a ring fort. I think when you think of, and most people do think of ring forts in Ireland, the Farmstead ring fort definitely comes to mind. And it's definitely something that's unique to us, because, and it's definitely a question you get a lot, is like, why isn't, for example, these ring forts as big as you'd see in the likes of Britain and France, when comparing the ring forts in Britain and France, which are the ones that you see around 300, well, I'd say around 90 AD to around 300 sorry, no, go back 90, what was it, BC up to around 300 AD in both France and in Britain, comparing that to what you see in Ireland around 550, where you see these, much more smaller ring forts suddenly starting to dot the whole island of Ireland, which are the Farmstead ring forts, which are, your basic common farming ones, where you'd have your farm to the side, you'd have a nice little area to do your living and administration, and then you've got room to watch your cattle during the winter months while they're, having their own pasture in your local area and stuff.
Yeah, one point, just I agree with you, but one point to throw in that's not mentioned much is that the rise of ring forts in a way was connected to economic and some technological change, because in the 4th century a new sort of plow came in the 7th century, in around 600 the horizontal mill starts appearing, then another type of plow appears. So more food is being produced, therefore the population can grow or is growing. And also the ring forts, in a way, at the same time that you're having the explosion of ring forts, because I think it's 47,000 are identified at the moment, and you can probably, there's at least 10,000 that have been destroyed or are gone. Every town in Ireland that begins with Dun or Cashel, those ring forts are gone. So you have an explosion in ring forts, but you also have an explosion in monastic settlement. And recently they've been pointing out, or they think that ring forts are more connected with cattle, whereas the monasteries, they were connected with growing grain, and they were located in different areas, different types of land, even different heights. It's an interesting point that's not talked about much.
Also, I want to add on that, you were saying about technological advances and changes that were happening in Ireland. Political changes were happening too, like the rise of the Tua. We have different changes happening, not just economically, politically. Now, these are probably much like the establishment of ring forts, are all connected to each other as more farming comes in, more wealth comes in, huge population booms happen, and with that comes a political change as well. So you have the rise of the Tua. You have, and also you were saying there about monastic sites and how they're all connected. Medieval kingship was not static. It was a very mobile sort of kingship. So they moved around a lot. So they find that wherever you find ring forts, you find, like Owen said, monastic sites, and eventually you find crannogs and stuff like that, especially in the north. So you find they're all connected, and they're all interwoven as the king or chieftain, or whatever term you want to use, is constantly mobile throughout his ruling territory or Tua to maintain dominance of his rulership. So you can see how they're all sort of interconnected.
Yeah. So Dennis just made a good point there. I have a ring fort on my farm. The most striking feature is the view of the River Bandon, and also the fact you can see so many ring forts from it. I think that point is very, very important. What normally, if you go to a ring fort, you can kind of almost toss a stone and find another ring fort, because they occurred in these groups, and too often people just focus on one that has been restored or a very big one. They forget this point that they were built in networks. So you have a bigger ring fort, and then you'll have smaller ones. The average size of a ring fort is about 30 meters in diameter. It's not very big. There are some bigger ones, where the more important lord would have been, but they occurred. So like they weren't defensive as such, but the fact is you might have 4 or 5 neighbors who could see if you were being attacked. That is another type of defense, and it's probably more important.
Yeah, and I think Dan makes the same point here as well. Even with the new technology with drones and stuff, we're seeing so many ring forts suddenly appear right next to each other. Like Newgrange is another spot where you're going to find a ton of ring forts as well. Like, so yeah, I definitely would agree. They're definitely bundled together. Anytime you'd see one ring fort, you're going to definitely see a whole group of them together as well. Like, and another good point off Dan as well is the fact that with drone technology, you fly those drones up and you see, as Dan is pointing out there, what people refer to as fairy forts, which are the outlines of ring forts, these farmstead ring forts dotted all over the place, but always kind of clumped together as well, like, which is definitely another point I'll bring up later on again, that they're literally, ring forts are all
another point there. I think Anthony Murphy was the guy of Dronehenge. But I think in terms of distribution, certain areas of the country have more ring forts. But I have a feeling in part that has to do with survival, because here in Kerry, especially South Kerry, most of the farming is sheep or cattle. Whereas if you go to Meath, to Kildare, there's a lot more crops. It's a lot more intensive. It's been used much more heavily over the centuries. So I would say that a larger amount of ring forts have been destroyed in those areas.
And just going through the comments there, a lot of good suggestions of really, really good ring forts there as well, guys. I'm just going to fly through this one as well and pop over to the next one. Oh, yes. Actually, we were slightly indicating on this one as well. And before I just elaborate on this a wee further, yes, I'm fully aware that this is actually an image from the late medieval period with Gallo glass in their late medieval formation, a formation you will not see in the early medieval period. However, I just want to indicate on this one, cattle raiding. That cattle raiding was a constant threat, especially out in the outskirts of pasturing and stuff, where you'd have armed groups coming in and taking cattle and trying to bring it back to their own area and stuff. It was definitely there was definitely a whole load of cattle raiding going on in the summer months, where especially from November all the way over to late October, where the cattle would be more out in the countryside, as part of, what's that key word? It starts with P again, where you send the cattle out.
Bullying.
Starts with
bullying.
P. Sorry?
Is it
no, I wasn't thinking about that one, but it's kind of connected. Pasturing, wasn't it? We send the cattle
I thought this, and I was like, there's no way you forgot pasturing. Like, I suppose I figured
that was my brain.
I was just thinking.
I think I literally just said it.
Yeah, you'd said it like 5 words before, so I didn't.
Yeah. So you send, anyway, between November and October, you send the cattle out to the tough areas to go and pasture and stuff. However, from late October onwards, you kind of bring the cattle back in again. What's your ideas? Because I've come across a few historians already who have talked about the ring forts being used to protect cattle inside of the ring forts itself. What do you guys think about that one? Because I've never come across any solid arguments to prove cattle could be kept inside of the early Irish ring forts.
I'm going to put my 50 pence piece in, because I know Owen will actually have a lot more probably to say than I will. And that I know that cattle raiding is one of the suggestions for the rise in the southern growth in ring forts. And I would say it's a natural thing to go. If you have a stone wall circular area that's naturally defensive, it's normally they occupy high ground, can be seen by other ring forts. It would seem like a natural place to go for civilians if you were trying to get out of the way of any sort of conflict. But that is literally just my thoughts on it. But I will let Owen probably give you a more academic understanding of it than me just going, I think so, because there's a stone wall.
I think that the ring forts were basically homesteads. Most were not the big stone forts. Most were made of clay. They probably had a wooden palisade. And as I said, the average diameter was 30 meters. Inside that 30 meters, you had at least one house, possibly two. You may have had smaller stores and stuff like that. So there's not much room inside for animals. You might have had like a goat, some other stuff, maybe a dairy cow. But I have a feeling that the people didn't bring their animals inside because it's too small. It's too like, can you think of being stuck in 30 meters, like a 30-meter diameter? I don't know how you convert that into square. 30 meters circular, with at least two buildings, a number of people, and a whole pile of cattle. And then most of the walls were not particularly high. You may have, like, if it was an earthen one, probably the wall would have been a meter, maybe a meter and a half, and then you can throw on another meter with a wooden palisade. A determined person will get past that. The raids were to me, would be something that's very quick. They're trying to get as many cows out as possible without getting attacked. And the fact that you have your neighbors who may be related to you, or that you may be the client of a lord who's near you, he has to protect you. This network offers much more protection than bringing your cows inside.
I definitely would have to agree on that one. And I see the same problem popping up as well in the late medieval period as well, where you have the Irish tower houses are up and you've got the walls around it. And it's always a debate if cattle are being brought inside of the tower, inside the walls of the castle or not. And it's not even a case of if they have room inside, but it's also the gate as well. Like, can cattle go through this gate or not? Don't get me wrong. Like, I think perhaps it's possible in, when you go up to the late medieval period and you're talking about tower houses in the northwest of the island of Ireland, it could be in the realm of possibility that cattle may be brought inside. However, definitely in the southeast of the island, more of the Anglo-Irish castles, a lot of them, like so many of them, I can't think of a single one right now, to be honest with you, which would be decent for cattle raiding.
Seamus makes a good point. Maybe a few special animals were brought inside. And also Dan is making a point. Cattle are known for eating straw thatch. So if you brought 50 cows inside your ring fort, they might leave you with big holes in the.
Well, I mean, if you're being raided, would you really mind a few big holes?
Okay, Dennis, who's a farmer, he's making some points about what cattle do to the ground, leaving it very muddy. Cattle need space, sort of. I think, in reality, the cattle stayed outside. Maybe you would hope that you would have enough advance notice that you could move them somewhere together, and you put a few people around them, which is more protection than like a small little ring fort.
Just heading back over to the comment section there. For everybody that's just joining us now, heading into the next hour or so, definitely comment below with any questions whatsoever you guys have on Irish ring forts. Any questions that you guys have as a whole, as we slowly go through this presentation that I put together with the help of Owen O'Neill. Well, somewhat. Owen O'Neill's chucked in references and stuff. So any actual problems with the PowerPoint, that comes down me, because I actually put it together by myself.
I haven't seen
Owen O'Neill's references and stuff. Owen O'Neill's in for a surprise each time.
Philip already knows that I never see the pre-briefing or anything like that.
Well, to be fair, you were busy with work. We can't fully revolve around YouTube all the time. Just popping over to the next slide there. Oh yeah, it was a point that you see, I keep clicking this, right? I click up in the top right, and when I say expand, I expect it to expand like Owen O'Neill and Michal is doing, but every time I click expand with the PowerPoint presentation, it just does this, and I'm like, oh well, that was very disappointing. But what was it called? Anyway, my point being with this slide, I was actually going to go on and make the point that you guys have already pointed out, that pretty much the fact that these Irish ring forts are pretty much dotted all over the island of Ireland. And when you do find them, you find them kind of all together as one big group of ring forts as well. And as Owen O'Neill has pointed out early on, it's simply down, it could be just down to the fact of defensive purposes, that if one Irish ring fort gets attacked, then all together as a group they can actually defend them. And then we were kind of discussing the fact of, could they be used as defensive purposes in a cattle raid? And most likely probably not, because it'd be probably very difficult to fit a cow inside one of these ring forts. So it is quite interesting that we have a society that's built on cattle raiding, and yet it seems to be strange, especially if I point out, I don't know if I can find the word next, but regardless, when it comes down to the finer details to these Irish ring forts, sometimes you find words like dun and stuff that could be a play on words on the word cow, perhaps. So then you've got, the continued argument of, are they being, cows being put inside these ring forts, when you've got kind of the usage of the language. No, I'm not a linguistic, obviously, but sometimes you've got archaeologists that point out, hey, look, there's a play on words on cow, so perhaps they were used to bring cows inside. But I have always wondered that as well. Where would you put the cow? Especially when you go into late medieval period and you see, you start to see the same words creeping again of, the word for wall being played with, the word cow and stuff. And yet I can't see anywhere that you would actually put the cow.
Well, there's a great question there by Caveman Graffiti. Cows are incredibly heavy. Too many would destroy the ground, especially coming in the winter months. Is there any evidence of them building barns for their cattle? I will say that I don't know for archaeological, I've never really looked at the archaeological digs of possible barns, but we do have it mentioned in the early St. Patrick myth when he goes across and he's the King Diku of Ulster. He is given a barn as his, just to be his first church, called Saul. It's a place called Saul, and that means barn in early Irish. So obviously, this is a mention of the fact that we have barns in medieval Ireland, at least in the 5th century, according to, I can't remember what the source is, but it's an early Irish tradition. So I'm guessing it's 6th, 7th century. So you can see the barns, or some idea of barns, did exist, just from that particular anecdote.
Yeah, near me, there's a lot of on the back of Valentia Island, which has been left alone for a long time. There are walls. Some of the walls go back to Bronze Age because they found organic material. Some are Iron Age or later. Some they identify as enclosures for a field. Others are smaller. The problem with finding, there must have been barns, but the problem with finding evidence for them is probably the barns were made out of wood and or turf. So you'd have to be lucky and find the post holes, and you can find post holes, but I know archaeologists kind of joke about this among themselves. Like when they find a building, someone always kind of says, "Oh, this was ritualistic, etc." If you're digging up someone, you find a building, I think naturally a barn is going to be one of the last things that you're going to try and identify it on. Everybody wants to find something exciting, not a barn. Also near me, there's ruins of a Gaelic village, which kind of existed from the 11th century to the 17th. And you can see there are houses there. And many of the houses, there's a small structure attached to them. That could have been for storage, or it could have been a small, for a calf, for a pig, something like that. So there must have been barns.
Barns make more sense, though, to be bringing them over to a barn for safekeeping rather than trying to cram them into those small little Irish ring
same time,
forts.
I live in Valencia. I live in an area that's completely exposed to the Atlantic. The weather can be brutal there. And like, there's a storm, whenever we get hit by a storm, which happens more often, I look out the window and I just see the cows and sheep just ignoring it. And I know that farmers from the east coast of Ireland, they like buying the cows from here because they go to the east coast of Ireland and they fatten really quickly. So these cows, most of them are outside kind of the whole year round. So
Davey
1,000
raises
years
a
ago or
point.
more, they would probably have been able even more strong.
David raises a point, and it's actually true that maybe just some became downgraded for cattle down the line as better forts were developed. We do know that right up until even today, some sites are being used for cattle and for various ages. And we know, especially during events such as the plantations and stuff like that. I mean, even just look at how what's that? Newgrange was found. It was they were found it by luck to try and turn that area into better farming. I think it was for cattle as well. So you can just see that there's a lot of areas. In fact, when I went down to Kerry and I went to see an old ring fort. I didn't know the name of it. It was behind a garage, and there was. They just says you can go out and look at it, but be careful of the cattle. So so it still happens, and it happened very early on. So did it happen in the early medieval period? I don't see why not. It doesn't make any sense for it not to. If you've suddenly upgraded, you've become higher up in your tour or political position, or you've moved. Why not?
Yeah, it definitely is, because that was one of my next main points is what's the difference between a regular Irish ring fort and a high status ring fort, especially when you start to build up and elaborate on your defenses and stuff, because you can definitely see multiple enclosures, which to me is always kind of a giveaway that this is more of a high status ring fort rather than a regular farmstead ring fort. And when you're making those upgrades, to me it makes perfect sense to give an area just to your cattle and have those upgrades and stuff definitely in there. Also, just popping over to the comment section where we have a comment off Seamus. To be quite honest with you, Seamus, I think anybody that kind of reads outside of their field of expertise is going to have difficulty. Given that a person perhaps hasn't even read on that topic, they would, find that quite difficult to read up on. To be fair, Seamus. So I don't think it's just academics. I think anybody that hasn't kind of read, their field of expertise is going to find it quite difficult to understand what's going on. But I do agree with your second comment, by the way, that the Ian Ale for the win is definitely right. And I think Bihal will definitely agree with that as well.
The true Gales. that I told you really. Won't go into that.
Just going back to cattle, I just remembered something. There's a field below my house, and there's a small castle in it, but it's actually a monastic settlement. It's full of cows most of the year, and the farmer, once a year or every 2 years, he basically goes up and down the field with a huge metal bar to flatten the soil, because the cows destroy the land. So I've walked on it when it's been dry, but there's loads and loads and loads of holes in the ground. It's very hard to walk there. So if someone was if I had a whole pile of cattle outside my ring fort and someone was trying to sneak up at me at night, they would find it very difficult to get there without falling over because of the damage the cattle do. They're a secret defense weapon as well.
Oh, definitely.
And then just in relation to the high status thing, the one of the things is size. Like Airgalla is quite a bigger ring fort. and there doesn't appear to have been anyone living there. The average ring fort, someone is living there. If you go and excavate, you'll find a house or two houses inside it. Cahergal, which was one of the, at some stage, was probably the most important ring fort inside South Kerry, inside the Iveragh Peninsula. No one lived there. And the walls are higher, etc. But I think the fact that no one lives there shows its status.
Yeah. Just heading back over to the comment section as well.
Sorry, just really quickly. What's that warning that just go on? Is that just ignore that warning? Do you see it?
There's a
2309.
No, I don't see the warning. Not yet, anyway. Is this in the comment section? Oh, seeing that one. Oh, just block him. It's just another troll.
All right.
There's a few of them. There's a good few of them tonight, lads. To be honest with you, I've been blocking a few of them. And just on top of that as well, lads, to everyone that's just come in there, thanks for coming on, jumping on there, lads, especially after work and stuff. And if you have any comments definitely related to the subject at large, which is medieval history in particular on Irish ring forts, definitely keep providing them there. But I've seen some comments there that will definitely get our algorithm in trouble there. So anything to do with modern politics, especially radical comments and stuff, I have to remove ASAP. And there's a few of them. I think they're on purpose, though. I do think on purpose that they are pointing that out to kind of wreck up our own algorithm. So I will be blocking those ones as I go through it. A really nice comment here, actually, just asking us if we've read the article to do with this ring fort in Galway. I myself, sadly, don't want to be rude to anybody, but I actually haven't read this article. And I am curious if it's any good. Have you guys read this article?
I haven't.
No, I didn't even know it was happening. I didn't even see it was there. I should have. To be fair, whenever I was getting all my note research together and stuff, I probably didn't even realize it was there to download it or anything. But no, we'll maybe designate some time to it next time we go over, tar houses or something like that.
Although I'm trying to get you there's so many articles out there, to be honest with you, but I'm curious if that one is a decent one. All right, perhaps my wife has probably read it because my wife absolutely loves ring forts as well. Sorry, there, Owen.
No, I was just agreeing with you.
Oh yeah.
There's a great question there, Philip. If you want, I don't. What we said it was something about. Do we know of any later castles being built on top of ring forts? Will that tie into a later question, or should we just?
No, we just go for it now because I don't actually have that one on the PowerPoint.
I'm just trying to find who it was, the individual that sort of said. Kaylee Follett. I'm late to the party. Were new types of castles possibly built on top of ruined ring forts, or were they completely abandoned to build new structures entirely? I know I can name a few that were built on top of earlier sites. Knockgraffon, which was originally inhabited by the O'Sullivans, eventually had a tower house put on it. Dunluce in Antrim is said to have been built on top of an earlier promontory fort, a link to the Cianachta. And there is a castle in Wicklow, promontory Fort Black Castle, I believe it is, which the O'Byrnes claimed the promontory fort as their early patronage, as their early site. But it seems like that was a bit of the fort probably existed, but the O'Byrne link was probably more that they wanted Black Castle and they wanted to try and use that as justification, because actually the O'Byrnes are from the other side of Wicklow towards, the Offaly direction rather than the coastal area. So I name a few that older sites, as Owen has said in many talks, recycling previous sites for new purposes is not a new thing. Or
I can name a lovely site. It's Rahanan, which is just outside Ventry. It was the seat of the Knight of Kerry, but it's built in this lovely bivalve rat, and with a huge deep ditch outside it. and you can visit it. I think you have to pay a couple of euro to the farmer, but it's a great place to visit it. The castle is right in the middle of it, and you can really make out the differences between the two of them. And I know there are others. Just another example. In 1600, the English built a fort between Uri and Armagh. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I can't. But they said it was a Dane fort because they couldn't admit to themselves that the Gaelic Irish were able to build stuff like that. So they found a ring fort and they built on top of it and around it to turn it into a modern artillery fort.
Just heading back over to the comment section there, guys. Definitely keep it up there. Some of these comments the lads are pointing out there, actually, there's so many good comments in here I actually can't find specifically sometimes the ones, but I'll leave the lads to just read it out for me if I can't find it, and we'll just slowly but surely answer it. I'm kind of like taking it from the top and just making my way down, and the two lads are picking out some really, really good ones as well. So since that, it seems to work pretty good with you guys picking out the good ones and myself just trying to work my way down. So we'll try to keep that up. Just heading over to Dennis's comment there about the ring fort that's up in the Bandon River. It's definitely one that's up around your area there, isn't it? Owen, up around the Kerry area.
No, Bandon is Cork.
Yeah, it's just
the River Bandon doesn't come near here at all, unless
does it? No,
unless you're trying to expand Kerry subtly.
I should be on Team Cork. You know what? I was supporting Team St. Finbarrs between them and what was it, Cashel? Because I'm located up in Mallow. And Mallow's always that kind of border between the fighting between the men of Cashel and the men of St. Finbarrs. So that's my main focus all the time. But yeah, I think Dennis points out another good point as well, agreeing with what we were saying earlier, how if you find one ring fort, you kind of find a whole lot of them all together at the same time as well. Like, so yeah, it's always a good point as well to bring up. Just making my way down as well. Those people would have been Gaelic Celts culturally, yes. Ooh, it's kind of a funny one because I'm assuming when you say Celtic, you're talking about the Latin culture that comes over. And then Ireland's branch of the Latin culture is referred to as Insula Latin culture, where Ireland kind of had its own thing going on around 300 BC up to around 100 AD. And then we start to blur into the kind of Hiberno-Roman kind of influences that start to come in from Britain into Ireland. Although Ireland was never taken over from the Romans, it started to definitely have its influences, especially the influences that we can see in, for example, the Rock of Cashel, where the term Cashel seems to be definitely influenced by the Romans. It would be interesting as we get into more archaeological work to do with Cashel to see how many influences, like, was the Rock of Cashel originally there before this kind of the kind of Briton Roman influence the Roman Britain influences start to come into Ireland, or did we have the ring fort there before the arrival? Did these influences start to come in? What's you guys thought on that? Because I know we slightly touched on it earlier before, the influences of culture coming from France and Britain, modern day France and Britain, into Ireland that would have impacted these ring forts.
There would have been culture coming in all the time, but how much they impacted on the ring forts, I'm not sure. The ring forts were there. They were there for, say, 300 years, and then they start to disappear, which I presume we'll talk about later. But the idea of a ring fort could have come from Europe, but it seems so natural a thing to build and so easy to build in a circle, as opposed if you build in a square or a rectangle, you're going to need something at a corner. The circle doesn't need a corner. So there probably were influences, but in other ways.
Yeah. It's an interesting, all right, because like you do have the insular well, even before that, like you could say it could be an evolution, because we do see the evolution going from the Bronze Age forts, and then slowly but surely those Bronze Age forts starting to disappear, and then around 550, then you start to see the arrival of Irish ring forts, and it seems to be that there may have been influences, especially with the kind of insular Latin, link that we have there with the continent, and then the later influences you would have seen with the kind of, as we're now referring to as the kind of Hiberno-Roman influences that we have coming in. But there never seems to be like a sudden change that, hey, look, actually, this is a really good idea that they're doing in Britain. We should suddenly do this in Ireland. It seems to be just its own evolution going on, with little bits of influences coming in from Britain and France. There never seems to be a sudden change, even with the eruption, because you can see with the Romans occupying and taking over France, that the Britons are suddenly like, oh shit, we need to actually suddenly militarily adapt and change our ways. I don't see, in my opinion, and this is my opinion now, I just don't see that happening in Ireland between 300 BC up to around 180. I just don't see those influences happening. Perhaps maybe it was, maybe if we do more archaeological work in Cashel, maybe we'll find that in fact actually there was impacts and changes that were happening in Britain that were in fact
I think a great example, I think
Ireland.
if you just want an example that maybe people can maybe connect to a little bit better, is that you think of the medieval castles. Castles existed in England. We'll use England as the example, but then we see how castles start to change as soldiers are coming back from the Crusades, and they start bringing back technology. That's probably about example that we have these ring forts. So they are existing in Ireland for whatever reason, for as we've discussed. But as people are going across and serving within the Roman military, or coming across the Roman military on the other side, they are learning and finding out new techniques. Going, oh well, when we took this town, or when we were building this, it worked really well, and bringing it back with them. So as we sort of touched on earlier, it's influenced by a lot of other places. Definitely, we can sort of see that in the naming and other techniques that I sort of went through earlier. But as its own entity, early entity of the Irish ring fort, as itself is a native Irish, invention. So but you can't, obviously nothing's just purebred. Everything gets influenced by someone else.
Yeah, that's very, very true.
Kaylee is actually asking an interesting question. With it's a few down there. Would a ring fort on the Aran Islands, would they have had a lot of interaction with mainland Ireland, and are there other forts out on some of the smaller islands around Ireland? Yes and yes.
Well, yes, an easy one. An easy one is with the Aran Islands. You have the Mackie Breens and the Flahertys constantly fighting over that territory. So it's a very important area to hold. I believe it sort of helps towards the trade to Galway city, or it has some it's part of the route, or it's good for stopping trade, or intercepting trade, maybe pirating. The Mackie Breens, who were a cadet branch of the O'Briens, were known to be quite let's just say naughty. So but yes, and the O'Flahertys had keen interests in the obviously in the trade going into Galway. So that's a really good example of just we can see the annals are littered with the constant backwards and forwards of the Aran Islands, which really shows that there's a lot of activity happening and connectivity with Ireland.
Yeah, like I live on Valentia, which has a bridge now, but the bridge is only was built in the 70s. There were ring forts here. Bear Island there were. I'm fairly sure Tory Island had ring forts. It had definitely has primary forts. And I think if you go to Clare Island, some of the other ones along the Atlantic coast, there's bound to be ring forts there. The one I'm not sure about is the Rathlin Island. There probably was on Rathlin Island, but that would be interesting to find out about, but I don't know. And then just about islands like Skellig Michael. Skellig Michael is 10 kilometers out. It's a rock, but they went out in boats. They built a stairs, they carved the stairs into the rock, and they built a little monastery on the very top, which with dry stonework, which is similar to some of the stonework you find in castles. So yeah, there's no question about it. The islands would have had ring forts, etc.
Right. Just popping over to this one there, because I think it's a quite interesting one, but at the same time, it's something that I kind of disagree with as well. Was the explosion of ring forts have anything to do with the Viking slave trade out in Dublin? Was slave raiding becoming more common in the 800 and 900 AD? I do agree that slave raiding, it did. You can't deny the fact that because of Dublin growing and making, like, Dublin became one of the biggest cities in Western Europe because of the slave trade. It was one of the biggest slave markets in Western Europe and completely dominated that whole area economically. So you can't deny that there is a sudden boom in slavery in that whole area. However, I don't think that there is an explosion of ring forts around 800 and 900 AD, in my opinion. I don't see that impact there. And also on top of that as well, the way that the defenses of the Farmstead ring forts are now, perhaps for high status ring forts, you would have those defenses there to prevent people from stealing your wife and your mother and your daughters and stuff. But in my opinion, I don't think the Farmstead ring forts, we were just saying there, and you guys are continuously elaborating on that, when it comes down to bringing the cattle in, they're absolutely terrible. And I would say they're also terrible at defending women, in my opinion. I don't think Farmstead ring forts are great at defending the home, in my opinion. What do you guys think about that?
I tend to agree with you. And in fact, I think rather than leading to an expansion in ring forts, this was or could have been one of the reasons for the decline of the ring forts. Like from 900 on, ring forts start declining rapidly. Some become bigger, some become royal sites, become developed, but most disappear. And I have a feeling that the Norse had a lot to do with this, as well as other political things. So the Norse triggers some sort of change that brings to an end what we could call the ring fort era.
Yeah, I agree. There's something very similar happens in Scotland too, where you start to see smaller, we'll just say forts, but we've already gone through the sort of types that they are. But smaller forts, outlying forts, start to migrate into, people start abandoning them and heading towards basically regional capitals with these threats of the Norse invasion. Who's clanging about there? He's like,
oh, my apologies. Sorry about that.
Yes, so I thought it was Owen getting me back for the other week when he was talking. I was typing away on a really loud keyboard.
Sorry about that.
So yeah, you do see it happening in Scotland too. As people in surrounding areas start to get these regional capitals, have bigger forts, expanding, and possibly linked to Norse incursions into Scotland. So it wouldn't be a far stretch to think it's happening and the same thing is happening in Ireland.
Oh, right, and stuff. Sorry, my internet cut there slightly for a wee bit. But yeah, I definitely would agree on top of that as well. Just moving forward there with the presentation there, as I'm slowly, definitely keep the comments in there, and we'll definitely, between myself, Michael, and Owen there, slowly but surely dissect your questions there, because I think these questions are absolutely amazing, to be quite honest with you, and definitely give us some thought. It's another thing as well, is it kind of feeds into this idea of I know I'm slightly going off topic a wee bit, but just talking about the Irish tower houses and how a lot of people believe that they're there for defensive reasons, when in fact, if you were to attack an Irish tower house around 900, because Irish tower houses pop up in 900 AD, and they start to, I think they're around 900 AD to around the 13th century, where you have these Irish tower houses that appear. And many people believe in the myth that they're there for defensive reasons against Vikings. Even yesterday, I saw a whole Irish Round Tower. And the Irish Round Tower, many people...
I was getting confused there for a second.
The Irish have suddenly built castles. Woo! No, sorry about that, guys. I actually mean Irish round towers, and how they appear around 900 AD to the 13th century. And on top of that as well, the problem is a lot of people believe in this myth of that they're built for defensive reasons against Vikings, which they don't kind of make any sense, because by the time we get up to 900 AD, the Norse have settled in Dublin and are giving tribute, and most of the time, to Donogh Dunn. Like, if you look into Donogh Dunn, once he goes into Dublin in 936, he wrecks up Dublin for his tribute. He's like, where's my bloody tribute? Wrecks the place up and takes his tribute off them. And from that point onwards, you see a healthy well, I wouldn't say a complete healthy relationship, but you see that tribute going from Dublin into into the Enale territory. And on top of that as well, places like Fingal, for example, you see monastic settlements being built there. And on top of that, they have Irish towers being erected left, right, and center. So it's not a case of Viking versus Irish, and this is why Irish towers are being constructed and built. On top of that as well, if someone does attack a tower, they collapse. There's no foundation to these buildings. They collapse very, very easy. And in fact, there's a technique of just going over and burning the bottom of it and just cooking whoever's inside in. So there's even a technique at the time of destroying these things very, very quickly. They're not great for anything defensively. They're just specifically constructed and built just to ring the old bell, so they can bring everybody into the area. There's no defensive reasons for these towers. So I just needed to add that in, because it kind of adds into this kind of, the Irish are trying to defend themselves from the Vikings, when in fact, especially around 900 AD, when you have the likes of Donogh Dunn, and later Mael Shocknall II, and even Brian Boru, there's no kind of, the Irish are not terrified of the men in Dublin. In fact, they have the men of Dublin, in my opinion, on a nice little leash, and they're making a lot of money off the slave trade, from my opinion.
Yeah, I think if anyone's got that, Christopher Wormead asked a good question. 2319. I see it there. If you want to bring it up, or need it.
Can you highlight it? No.
Did you fix that? No, I don't know.
I think it's just administration that can do that.
We don't have the power. We're not.
I can't highlight it.
231939.
Yeah, is that a bug? Is it?
No, that's the time he sent it, so you could find it easier. I'll just if you
just give us a second there. Oh yeah, read it out there if you like.
But how did the architectural evolution of Irish castles reflect the shifting political control between Gaelic clans and Norman? I think that's meant to be settlements.
Settlers, I thought. I understood settlers.
Oh, I mean, it might, I suppose, the same reply overall. I mean, the evolution of Irish castles really does reflect like shift in political order. You got the Anglo-Norman invaders, and they're imposing their feudal control through moats and stone castles, and they're there to sort of send this like symbols of like centralized authority. And they're, like we've already discussed, many of them are often built on previous Irish Gaelic sites. And obviously, so the Gaels would resist this imposition, but actually they start to gradually absorb the Norman influences, which we can see when you start having tower houses being built in the from about like I think 1550, and they're being built, and then you actually see that the English start having the Tudors start actually, I think it's the Tudors, they start encouraging Irish families who are maybe more English leaning to build more tower houses, and they actually give funding as well. I will say it's limited. Most of it goes to English families, but there is evidence of it going to English families. So obviously, Norman control is about taking control of the newly held territories, imposing their will, as you were, but the Irish obviously see the benefit of this, and started adopting it. So it did have a huge impact on the archaeological evolution of Ireland, and how we became more feudal later on as well. So it had a huge impact. In my opinion.
I have 2 points there. One, I was listening this afternoon. The Amplify Archaeology podcast is a very interesting one. A lot of very good interviews. And one of the first ones was about castles in Ireland with Professor Tyge O'Keefe, I think it was. And he makes the point that castles appear in Ireland before the Normans. The first appearance of castles in several annals dates to 1124. And Tyge O'Keefe reckons that it could go back as early as the 10th century. For example, if you know Tara, in the middle of Tara, there is what's called the Furra. He says that could very well be a Gaelic motte, the mound that they would build on. So castles started in Ireland before the Normans. And then just jumping to the end of the castle period, in the 1590s, in the 9 Years' War, we have a few very interesting paintings or diagrams of battles. And you can actually find tower houses inside crannogs. Some appear to be wooden, some may be stone. So that's a mixture of two traditions. Sort of the tower house became a very interesting Gaelic Irish and Old English tradition. And like there are a lot of very interesting Gaelic castles built in the 16th century, the 15th century.
The thing is, as well, with the argument of did Ireland have castles before the arrival of the Normans, is that when it comes down to moat and bailey castles, they are so easy to upgrade when it comes down to the evolution of ring forts, because as we go into the 11th century, by the time we get up to that point, if you look at, for example, the Rock of Cashel, for example, and they're building the likes of Cormac's Chapel, and then you go to other areas in Ireland where they're bringing over German architects and stuff, and they're building, especially monastic settlement-wise, they're building way more advanced settlements than moat and bailey castles. Like, moat and bailey castles are very standard compared to the monastic settlements that they're building at this period. Like, I look at the advanced versions of arches and stuff that they're building with these monastic settlements, and then I look at a moat and bailey castle, and I look to myself and I think to myself, well, all a moat and bailey castle is a fortification now on a hill. That's literally all they're doing, is they're building the hill. And at that point, because you have the likes of Murtochy Brain, Turloughy Brain, Then you have the O'Connors that take over. In that whole time period, there's so much connection between Ireland and Normandy, and with the likes of Brittany, and also with England and Scotland as well. Like, the Irish are constantly moving between the two, especially the Hiberno people, the Gael Gael, for example, the foreign Irish, and the Norse, who were going between the Gaelic realm and the Scandinavian realm, that they are constantly, especially after 1080 with the Crusades, are constantly in contact with the the Normans, and also over to England as well. So they would have seen these things at any time and then thought to themselves, looking at it, sure, these things are easy to build. All you do is build up on the hill of the fortifications that we already have in Ireland and bring that technology back. I'd be quite honest with you. I think that technology is very easy to bring over, especially at the standard of archaeology architect that we already have in Ireland at the time of the late 11th, 12th century, to be quite honest with you. So I can't see why the Irish wouldn't be able to pull off Moat and Bailey castles, when it comes down to that argument and debate. And I know the counter argument is, hey, look, we haven't found any solid evidence of any Moat and Bailey castles yet. We found indications of Moat and Bailey castles, but we haven't found a solid evidence yet. But I think to myself, Moat Bailey castles are so easy to build. If you're already building ring forts to the standard that we can already find in 10th century Ireland, I can't see why we can't just build that moat up already. Do you know what I mean? Like, it comes down to the argument of, did Ireland have Irish Moat and Bailey castles before the arrival of the Normans?
I suppose I'm just trying to think what would be. I mean, we obviously are building these things in localized places, but I think it's not just. There's almost like there's not an. It's that we don't need it. It's not suitable for the type of warfare, the type of political situation in Ireland, the type of structure, political structure and feudal structure, or whatever you want to call it. It's not needed in Ireland for, especially when you see what the Normans used it for. That was not the kind of warfare and the type of clientship or conquering that the Irish would do. A lot of the Irish conquering, a lot of it was primarily either you kept the same ruling dynasty, but you took another family from that tribal group or wider group, or you moved your own family in, and they just basically adopted the identity and all essence of the previous owners. They took on the tribal name, they took on all these things. So there wasn't this sort of need of this imposition of like holding ground. It was almost like there's an understanding that things have changed and things will change again. We will raid next year. We'll go to battle next year. Whereas obviously you've got these Normans that are having to hold foreign territory. I think maybe that might have something to do with it, rather than, like I say, it just wasn't needed. They weren't needed in the same aspect they were when the Normans came.
Yeah.
Just another point there about castles. First of all, the definition of castle, it's actually difficult to define.
Yeah.
And secondly, a castle is more than a big defensive. It's more than a defensive building. It's also a building of where the Lord is demonstrating power and lordships. So many Irish tower houses had a hall attached to them. Sometimes the hall is built out of stone, sometimes it wasn't. And in the hall, the Lord does what a Lord does. Lorded? The Lord ruled. He demonstrated that he was the power. He had feasts. You were invited to meet him, etc., etc., etc. So castles were a very good way of demonstrating power. They were a great way. The Normans used them for conquering, for ruling, but they also used them as bling to say, look, we're powerful, we have this. and so did Gaelic lords afterwards, and perhaps before.
Yeah, because I definitely would agree with that, Owen, to be quite honest with you, because the question is because one of the main areas that many people believe that Moat and Bailey castles perhaps were starting to appear in is the O'Connor territories, which definitely I would agree with when people do point out that, hey, look, we definitely we are starting to get more and more knowledge that perhaps there were Moat and Bailey castles in the O'Connor territories. And it does make sense, because if you sit down and read what Murtagh Í Breen was up to before he was usurped by the O'Connors, he was very much influenced, in my opinion, from the Normans and what they had done in England and stuff. And he does seem to want to bring in more and more centralization into Ireland, and more of the ideas of centralized kingship. And we can see that with his marriage with Norway, how he's trying to get recognized as King of Ireland from the Norwegians in Norway. His relationship with Scotland, how Scotland sent him over a camel as a kind of modern, because it seems to be that whole gift giving seems to be in line with the kind of gift giving that you see between various monarchs in Europe as well, especially during the period of Crusades, where you get a gift in from the Crusades. In this example, we can see the example of a camel from the Crusades being used as a gift over to Murtagh Í Breen to recognize him as King of Ireland, and his relationship with the papacy as well, and, trying to get him recognized as King of Ireland. So Murtagh Í Breen was definitely bringing in the ideas of more centralized kingship. Now, as Micheál has pointed out as well, although you could say, hey, look, maybe the O'Connors were bringing in a more form of centralization, the rest of the island of Ireland was still kind of stuck to its old ways of decentralization and was more focused on cattle raiding and stuff. So perhaps maybe we could find indications of that with the O'Connors. But the rest of the island of Ireland, especially like when I look at the likes of the MacLucklans, for example, who were in a constant civil war with the O'Connors, I can't see any development of Moat and Bailey castles to do with them, to be quite honest with you. So maybe there's a form of development going on there with the O'Connors and their idea of kingship and centralization going on there. But the rest of the island, especially when they move into the O'Brien territory and the McCarthy territory, they also seem to be very anti this centralization and seem to want, especially for their own power and independence, want to keep to this decentralization of kingship. Just popping back over to the comment section there. We're in the kind of the last 15 minutes there, lads. So I definitely want to start wrapping up as well. But I definitely think this is a very good comment in the comment section. And one pointed towards yourself there, Owen, just to elaborate on what you were saying the other day on your, what was it, Q&A. Yeah. You spoke, Ian, of the early Irish Dark Ages. Do you know what caused this dramatic population collapse or something like that? I'm assuming this is the collapse that happened between 500 BC to around 180. Am I correct?
Yeah, saying that? Like, well, they don't know much. That's why they've taken. It's kind of a joke that the Irish Dark Ages is because you have the Bronze Age, which was a golden age in Ireland. Just go to the museum in Dublin, you can see all the gold. Then in comes iron, in comes a new technology, and a better technology in many ways, but something happens. It could have been climatic. From where they've done like pollen samples, they see that there's much less cereals being planted, crops being planted, so which kind of makes people think that the population had declined unless it was a huge rise in eating meat, which I don't think so. So, but as I said, it's a dark age, so they don't know, they can't prove anything. But it looks like the population declined. I have a feeling it could have been due to climate. The climate changed a bit, or it got much colder. There could have been some sort of cultural change as well. The Bronze Age societies, the Bronze Age cultures, maybe they went into a period of decline. Iron starts coming in, but the Iron Age culture it takes a while for it to become to start expanding again. So it's a sort of a hiatus that went on for 500 years, maybe 600 years, and there's a lot that they don't know about it. It's hard to explain.
It's a funny one, all right. Just heading back over to the comment section as well, guys. Seamus, definitely number one for coming in with the amazing comments inside the comment section. Definitely keep it up there, Seamus. Just going back to one of your older comments there, Seamus, because I thought this was a really good one as well, Seamus. Is there any link between them, ring forts, I'm assuming, and other types of monuments like Souterrains, Ogum, and some just due to land passage grave, some due to culture Ogum? I'm assuming, is there any links between ring forts and the monuments and Souterrains and stuff? Because I know straight away, obviously, there's links between ring forts. I don't know if there's any links between ring forts and Ogum stones that I'm aware of, to be quite honest with you.
Well, there is a ring fort castle near me. In the field below, but it's a castle. It's a stone. Essentially, it's a stone wall around a monastic site, and there is a ring. There's an Ogham stone inside it. But that was a religious settlement. Ogham is very much Munster, and I think especially Cork and Kerry. It appears on land, and like I think most of the places they found it are not connected to ring forts. I think it was more just used for identifying land, identifying areas. I think in the question you also mentioned passage graves or something like that. They were all of them were much passage graves. All of them were much before. They're nothing to do with ring forts. I think Ogham predates ring forts slightly and existed for a while. It could have been the same culture. Souterrains are some ring forts, especially castles, have souterrains, but you can also find, and the archaeologists have been finding, lots of souterrains in areas that are not ring forts. So they were used in some ring forts.
Thanks for that one. I'm just finishing up with this one, Ad. So if there's any last minute questions coming in, Michal is paying attention to that one. So he'll quickly just knock me. Just Michal, just do what you used to do. Just push me to the side and grab the question if it's really important. So definitely keep the buzz going in. I'm actually working from the top downwards, and Michal is just paying attention to the newest questions that are popping in if they're really good. A more of a serious question here. Are fairy forts burial grounds to unbaptized babies? To be quite honest with you, I can't find any links to unbaptized babies and fairy forts, to be quite honest with you. Now, no. I specialize in medieval history. I don't specialize in modern history. But I've never found any link between fairy forts and unbaptized babies. Sorry about that one.
Who was the person who asked that question? I think it was a she. Yeah, Kira. The unbaptized babies are buried or were buried in Killeens or Kalunaks. Most of them are in previous monastic settlements. It's basically as if the people, they were annoyed with St. Augustine. I think the whole idea, this Christian thing of the unbaptized babies and suicides and strangers and washed up bodies, that they couldn't be buried in sacred ground, dates theologically back to St. Augustine. And to me, the idea of the killing is basically people said, look, we have this poor unfortunate baby. We're not allowed buried in the church graveyard, but down the road we have an ancient monastic site that is sacred ground. So there are rites and rituals that were carried out. They went and they buried the unfortunate baby in this killeen. They've excavated some killeens. They found small little toys. They've also found adults. In a coastal area, it could have been a person, a body washed up. It could also be a suicide. But they are they were not with ring forts. They're with former monastic sites, former religious sites.
Just popping into this one here before we have to say goodbye. So definitely keep feeding us with these amazing questions there. Oh, sorry, we already answered that one. I was actually meant to list this one here. Gerald de Wales, I think he noted that the Irish never saved fodder like hay for the cattle. I think we had plenty of hay for the cattle, and I think it would have been saved up, to be quite honest with you. But in my opinion, I think Gerald of Wales wanted to see us more like nomads, which makes absolutely no sense at the same time, given that, you know, the evidence that we've seen today with the Irish ring forts and the fact that they're very kind of, I was pointed out there, farmstead ring forts, which are very much focused on, you know, the old farming and stuff. So especially with souterrains and stuff, souterrains are definitely used for definitely kind of refrigerating food and stuff during the winter and stuff. I wouldn't say it's as good as a refrigerator today, but, you know, I've read archaeologists point out before that souterrains have been used for refrigerating. So I definitely think it's in their capability to save up the hay and stuff for the winter and that.
Yeah, I think you have to take anything that Geraldus Cambrensis says with a very, very, very large pinch of salt. He's not reliable. And it could be that when he was riding around with his cousins, he didn't see any fodder because his cousins had been busy burning it, or else the Irish were hiding it because they didn't want it burnt. I think that the Irish knew how to make hay, etc. And I think it's another of Geraldus Cambrensis's inaccuracies, shall we say.
Another amazing question as well for you, Dr. Owen O'Neill, that you've covered before. I was also wondering about the fairy aspect. Do we know when or how ring forts become associated with the fairies? Is it just because they were old and people didn't have archaeology knowledge? I think that one you've covered this before, Dr. Owen O'Neill.
Yeah, I think we discussed this last week, but I think there's two aspects. One, like the fairy folk before becoming fairies were either the Tuatha Dé Danann or the She. The She, before meaning specific people, meant the mounds. So it was referring to like ring barrows mainly. But if it was all, then it would have been transferred to ring forts, etc. And then in the Victorian period, the 19th century, the Victorians loved all these fairy ideas, especially, you know, the romantic period in Europe, and the whole concept of fairy changed dramatically. And I think it's really only in the late 18th, early 19th century that the ring forts became associated with fairies. Because if you look at records from the 16th, 15th century, the English just called them Dane forts. They said these were built by the Vikings. So there was nothing to do with fairies. Fairies was much more recent.
I'm just quickly going through that. Is there any question there, Michal, that you've seen that needs urgent attention when it comes down to the comments and stuff? I see a lot of comments there. Another one off Susan as well, supporting Michal as well, up with the email. Does anybody like the Onachta, my guys? Or is this just an all email party going on here? Like,
I like them both. I'm an O'Neill, but I'm living in
you're invading. That's what it is. You're taking. Yeah. I will just say just quickly. I seen there was a talk about families and their links to. So some were saying about the Collins surname and their links to the O'Byrnes that he was surprised about. He didn't know anything about it. There are, just really quickly, there are multiple unrelated lines of every surname, but there was a Leinster group called the O'Quillans, I believe, who they are a Leinster family from the Wexford area who have been anglicised to Collins. So that could be the family you're looking for. if you're surprised why there's Collinses, but you've got to remember there's many independent Gaelic lines happening all the time. What we know of how many families there are, and actually what we see in the annals, is only a very small snippet of these family names. So, but if you've got any questions about families and you're doing anything about DNA, come across, and I'll help you.
I just want to quickly fly over to, because we talked about a few times a regular casual, and I just don't want anyone leaving today not being able to tell the difference. Just this is your regular farmstead ring fort here with the wooden placement, and if you come across the word casual, it's mostly highlighting. I know this rocket casual is kind of over exaggerated a wee bit. There's kind of better examples of your regular casual. Oh, there we go. That's always a good example. Because here you've got more of a stone circular formation. So when you come across the word casual popping up, and this is why it does get funny when we go into the 11th to 12th century and we start to see the word casual being associated with castle. That's where it gets very, very confusing for the likes of myself in particular. Maybe for more advanced linguistics, they don't trip over the difference between Moat and Bailey castles and Irish ring forts, well, stone Irish ring forts. So anytime you come across stone Irish ring forts, they're referred to in the literature as casual. So I just needed to highlight that for you guys, because sometimes we were kind of chucking it out there, the word casual, but we hadn't elaborated on what casual was. And I noticed that we were coming to an end to our little conversation that we're having today. So I just needed to put that out there for you guys. I don't think there's anything else we need to elaborate on. Michal, is there any question that we definitely need to get finished before we finish up?
No, I feel like most things have either been covered or would be better having their own sort of thing. It would be too long to sort of go into. We don't want to be going too far. You did say you want to stick to the 2-hour limit. So.
Yeah, we kind of want to stick to the 2-hour limit for a lot of these subjects, because God, the three of us together, even when we turn it off, we can end up talking and talking and talking all night about a lot of these subjects. But I kind of want to keep to the 2-hour point for a lot of this stuff. However, if there's a question that you feel we really need to answer for you guys, comment below. Once this recording is over, go into the comment section, comment below. We have no problems elaborate in the comment section, or even leaving your comment for next week, and we'll get back to you there. We haven't quite pin down what we want, because I kind of want to try to get a guest on by the time we get up to the 8th of October. So I was kind of in the background without the guys knowing yet, trying to get guests on and stuff for us to have an old chat with and stuff. But other than that, for the time being, we don't really have a plan for next week. So we'll have a little bit of a chat there of what we want to cover for next week. I think it's cattle raiding. Cattle raiding is what we wanted to cover next week, wasn't it?
I think that's what you wanted to cover next week.
Well, that's what I want to cover anyway. I don't know about you lads. So we'll probably cover, most likely for the time being, we'll probably end up covering cattle raiding for next week, which is definitely a subject I'm really looking forward to. I'm quickly scanning through, and bloody hell, Seamus, thank you so much for all the comments that you're leaving. They're absolutely amazing. And I just want to thank Michal and Dr. Owen O'Neill for coming on today. To be honest with you guys, I really, really enjoyed talking about this subject, and I absolutely love Irish ring forts. I wish I could just talk and talk and talk all night about them, to be quite honest with you. And I think other than that, if you guys are looking to support myself, definitely head over to my channel and head into my Patreon. This week, we're covering the second part of the Siege of Dublin. So this week, we're covering the second part of the Siege of Dublin. So if you're interested in the Norman invasion of Ireland, especially to do with the Siege of Dublin, definitely head over to my Patreon and subscribe there. It's 20 quid a month. Or if you're just looking to support the channel full stop, you're more than welcome to give whatever money you have, from 3 quid all the way up to 100 quid, if you're feeling very, very nice to me. Michal, how do we support your channel and the continued research that you're doing?
Just tell me I'm doing a great job. Just tell me you're proud of me. No,
happy days.
No, I will just say, someone's actually just asked, can we do a a chat on fosterage at one time, which I think would be nice.
Definitely.
We'll definitely write that down. Just to be fair, if you think about becoming a member either on TikTok or YouTube, that'd be great. I do members only lives every Thursday, so tomorrow night. If you've got any questions about your surname, locations, everything like that, perfect time to ask me. But apart from that, just keep watching and liking all the lives, and that'd be great. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Michal. And Dr. Owen O'Neill, if someone wants to continue to support your research, how do we go about supporting your research financially?
I have a buy me a coffee account that I put on all my videos. At the moment, I just have YouTube. I don't have members yet. I'm thinking about it. I'm a bit reluctant that way. I'm thinking about Patreon, but I need more time. But the best way is buy me a coffee on YouTube.
You're a most qualified researcher here, and you don't have a Patreon up and going. And now you're like, I'm hesitating if I want to get paid or not. Owen, are you mad? You're too polite. You're too much of a Kerry man. That's your problem. You haven't even been in Kerry that long, and you've already taken the routes of maybe it's a bit too much asking for some money for my research that I'm giving to the public. Anyway, guys, thank you so much.
Anyone have an opinion of Tullamore Dew? I know I don't drink whiskey, but I know a lot of people like it.
Oh, yeah, it's very nice. Gorgeous. Yeah, I absolutely love it as well. So does the wife here. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for all the support. And once again, guys, I'll see you next week. We'll most likely end up talking about cattle raiding, and the week after, probably fosterage. That's a good one there, Dennis.
I forgot to say that I do a live stream on Mondays or Tuesdays, depending on my daughter's sports. What sport? So I've been doing that most weeks.
Happy days.
And I brought out a video on Monday on Glendalough, on the monastic city of Glendalough. If anyone wants to have a look.
Definitely look forward to going through that one. Anyway, other than that, guys, thank you so much, and Slán go Alia.
See you. Thanks everyone. Go